This is Robert Kraft, and I'm coming to you live on SNNLive, and we're here at the 9th annual LD Micro main event in Bel Air, California. With me right now is Nick Blitterswyk from UGE International. It's a publicly traded company with the symbol UGE on the TSX Venture and UGEIF in the US. Nick, welcome back to SNNLive.
Thanks very much, Robert.
It's great to have you back. For our audience, let's start with an overview of the company and then go from there.
Yeah, no, sounds good. So we are a commercial solar developer. So in essence, what we're doing is we go to businesses. They've been purchasing energy from the utility for since the dawn of the utility, really. And what we do is we put solar on their rooftop. We don't charge them a thing, and we sell them the energy from that system at a rate cheaper than what they're currently paying. So for them, it's an immediate savings opportunity. They don't need to pay anything for that. And then what we do internally is work through all the sales and development and engineering and procurement and so on to build those projects and work with long-term investors to own those projects over time. So we're number one in the Canadian market. We're a strong player in the Northeast US, and we have a couple other pockets of business outside of North America as well.
So it's been not that long since we did our first interview, but please provide us an update as to what's been going on in the company.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, I think we met, it must have only been 6 weeks ago or something like that, but I think it's characteristic of the year it's been for us in terms of we've taken care of a lot of work this year so far, and so in that time we announced our Q3s, and the big thing for our Q3s, well, there's really two, but one of them is we had sold off a non-core division. So really we're a solar company. We had also had a wind division. Wind, the economics aren't nearly as strong, and so we had decided to divest that asset. And so that came through in our Q3s. What it did is really strengthen the balance sheet and lowered our debt quite considerably. So we have very small debt left on the balance sheet, returned to positive equity, lowered the expenses on our income statement. So we've been cash flow positive since early September now, which is something we had talked about last time we met. So that was very, very positive. Also posted a gain on the sale, which led to a nice profit in Q3 as well. And then the other one is we announced our backlog. And so keeping in mind last year's revenue is just over 6 million. So we announced our backlog end of September had grown to over 36 million. So six times last year's revenue, for 4 times, I think, give or take, what our revenue will be this year. Typically our backlog is a 12 to 18 month type of cycle. So you could quickly do the math on that and say, well, hey, we should be doing on a quarterly basis our whole revenue from last year here in the very near future. So yeah, it was a good quarter for us, and that's been the main update since I saw you last.
And how do some of these updates affect the company?
Well, I think twofold. I think a lot of our investors, to be frank, they've been waiting for our revenue to scale up, and I think the backlog is the first half of that, and then we're looking to our Q4s to be a real high watermark for the company in terms of where our revenue is going. So that's positive, and I think the wind sale. A lot of investors that we had been talking to, I think the strength of the balance sheet before that it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. I would say it's very strong now, and so that's been positively received, at least by those we speak with. I'm really looking forward to future deals we close, which are growing that backlog, and then also our quarterlies, starting with our Q4s, which are really going to show the scale of this business here in the coming future.
So since we last talked, there was a major news moment. We had the big U.S. election, and we're going to have a new president. So for UGE, how does this news affect you guys, and also and the solar industry as well?
Yeah, it's funny. Like when I'm meeting with investors, and including here at LD Micro, a lot of people, like a lot of generalist investors, they last took a real look at clean energy more generally in that sort of 07, 08 timeframe, and I jokingly call it the inconvenient truth years, because that was so much in the public lexicon at that time. And so since that time, at a high level, solar panel prices have gone from about $4 a watt to less than 40 cents per watt. So a 90% drop in that time frame. A lot of people don't realize that solar went from a fairly niche technology because it was expensive to, in all the markets we serve, the cheapest form of energy for the clients that we work with. And so the underlying economics just simply win out. And that's not based on government support or anything else. That's based on the fundamentals of the industry. So when I go back to the recent election, there's been a lot of talk about coal and other types of things, right? At the end of the day, people are going to choose the cheapest form of energy. Trump is not going to change the fact that solar is just getting incredibly cheap. And so from that perspective, I think we feel very, very confident. The US is about 35% of our revenue, give or take. Canada is a little bit more than that. And then again, there's some other markets that we're in. These markets are not only safe, but in Canada, it never looked better with the Trudeau government in terms of his level of support for renewable energy. And outside of Canada and US, like we're in markets where there's no incentives whatsoever, no government support. It just simply is the cheapest form of energy. So we feel good about where the industry's at, I think, regardless of any sort of regulatory support.
The company also announced a recent another news release other than the quarterlies. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, no. So recently we announced a 17-site portfolio in Greater New York City that we've won. So 17 projects. I think there's number one is it's a pretty large deal for us. So it's a little it's multiple phases. The first phase was around more than $1.5 million USD. That's only the tip of the iceberg in terms of the overall portfolio. So we'll be announcing the further sizes as we enter those next year. But what's really exciting about it is, there's been a lot of talk about battery storage and where that's coming. At a high level, I'll tell you our take on it is, for the most part, economics are still challenging without a large amount of government support, but it's starting to cross over, and the way that costs are coming down, this decade we expect it to be a major part of the clients we serve, a major part of their solutions. So this 17 site was partially funded by a government grant to further the deployments of battery storage, microgrids. And yeah, so these are 17 sites, all businesses affected by Hurricane Sandy, to be deployed over the next year and a half or so. And just looking forward to start deploying these this quarter, actually.
And where can our audience go and find more information about the company?
Yeah, so our website is www.UGEI.com, and on the website we have an investor newsletter, so you can view the recent investor newsletters and also sign up for any future announcements, so future deals that we're closing and so on.
My name is Robert Kraft, and I'm coming to you live on SNNLive, and we're here at the 9th annual LD Micro main event in Bel Air, California. With me again is Nick Blitterswyk from UGE International. It's a publicly traded company with the symbol UGE on the TSX Venture and UGEIF in the US. Nick, thank you again for joining me.
Thank you very much, Robert.